3, 2, 1.
My race plan is a bit of a stupid one. I may well blow up, so I'm going to completely ignore good sound advice. Well, firstly, apologies for getting this video out a little bit late. I did have plans to put in a bit more effort and do kind of a cool video for this race recap, but we've had family staying with us and it just hasn't been possible. So I thought I'd just come out on my lunch break, record a quick update video because it's been a while since the marathon and I had a few people messaging me, kind of, are you dead? What's happening? So yeah, here's the update video. So if you're new here, I ran Perth Marathon just over a week ago. The goal was sub-3, and to cut straight to the chase, I missed that goal by a long way. So I ended up running 3 hours 10 and 48 seconds. So still really happy with that, but I completely blew up during the race, which isn't very surprising. I may well blow up, and I may well come back to this section of the video and think, James, you idiot. James, you idiot. So we'll just go through it. So on the starting line, I felt pretty good, but certainly not the best. And I reckon a big contributor to that was the taper. So I think I probably peaked during my last long run. So 2 weeks before the marathon, had a really good run, but after that had some pretty bad runner's knee. Now I spent my taper period going to the physio a few times, had a sports massage, which helped. But I actually stopped running completely during that period. Well, for the first week, I still ran about 80 Ks. And then for the next week, I didn't run at all, apart from a 5K shakeout run the day before the race. And so I've learned that that really is not ideal prep. I didn't feel loose, I didn't feel bouncy, springy, ready to go. I just felt lethargic. So I was on the elliptical during that time, but it's not the same. So definitely tapered way too hard during that period, but it was probably the right thing to do still, given all the pain I had in that knee, because it was pretty bad. And the knee ended up affecting things on the day, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the day itself, conditions I'd describe as okay. So they weren't good, they weren't bad. So the temperature, I think the low was 13 degrees Celsius, but it heated up really quickly. So I think when I finished, it was around 24, 25 degrees, which is too warm for running a marathon really, especially as I'd been training during the winter months. So it did get warm very quickly, but also the humidity was a bit of a killer. Humidity was 93%, so that certainly affected things, and I know it caught a lot of people by surprise. A lot of people struggled, like the final straight coming to the finish line was almost like a graveyard. There were so many people just collapsed on the side of the road, paramedics, people with cramps. Yeah, so it was the tough conditions on the day. But so let's go through it from the start. Yep, so the gun went off and it was really just a great atmosphere. Certainly the biggest race I've been in. There were 13,000 runners total on the day, which is just huge for Perth. In the marathon, I think there were 2,300 people. So that was cool to start off in a much bigger race. And there was a sub-3 pacer, which was really cool. So I stayed with that sub-3 pacer for a while. I didn't intend to. My plan was to negative split. So I wanted to start a few seconds per K slower, so around 4:18 per K, and then ramp up towards the end of the race. But yeah, I actually stayed with that sub-3 group for probably the first 5K, which was really interesting. So looking at the data, when I was with that pack, this really surprised me. When I was with that pack, I really benefited from the drafting effect. So I previously thought that drafting wouldn't be an issue for me because I ran too slowly. I thought that was only an issue for like elite runners running much faster in the marathon. But looking at my data, for that first 5K when I was with that pack, the air power was only 1%. So the air power is a little metric that the Stride foot pod measures, which is just how much extra power you need to overcome air resistance. So it was only 1% running with the pack. As soon as I dropped off that pack, it jumped to 4%, which is huge. So I was getting a 3% advantage running with the pack. Now, of course, there are lots of variables for drafting. So how tall you are, how wide you are, how fast you're going. But that was a really big point of learning for me, that in future, drafting should definitely be part of my strategy, because I saw a 3% improvement, which is massive. So the first 5K went really well. I was surprised at how quickly I was going because of that drafting, although I didn't know that at the time. So I ran at about, I think the first 5K was 314 watts. I was aiming for 320, so I was below power, but the pace was right on point. The first 5K I averaged 4 minutes 17, which is exactly where I wanted to be. And then the next 5K, you know, really smooth again, a little bit slower. I think, I'll check. I think it was about 419 for the next K. Yeah, 419 for the next 5K. The next 5K after that, 4 minutes 20, 4 minutes 20 after that. So really consistent. So that the first half of the marathon, I felt good. But what was interesting is that even though it felt comfortable, it didn't feel hard. I did find I had to focus to hold pace, which going forward, that's certainly something to learn from. That because I had to focus to stay on pace, otherwise I find I dropped back, that turned out to be an indicator, I think, that I started off too fast, because I completely blew up at the end, as we'll talk about. So it felt really good at the start. And just in general, one regret I have from the race actually is that I was so focused on the goal, I wasn't really taking anything in. My first marathon, it was so relaxed, I was just having a great time, there was no pressure. I just was smiling from start to finish and had a really good time. But this marathon, yeah, I kind of regret, I mean, there wasn't any pressure on myself, but I was very focused to do the best I could do. And as a result, I didn't really take in the atmosphere or the day, which is a shame because it was a really fun course. Most of it was on the freeway. So we ran through the Graham Farmer Tunnel. You know, that's a unique experience. We were running along the Mitchell Freeway down by the river. So there was a lot to take in, and especially at the finish line. So we finished inside Optus Stadium, which is awesome. But by that point, I mean, I was trying to take it in, but I was so completely cooked at the end. I was just in a daze. But anyway, we'll get to that. So I ran through the first half. So half marathon in an hour 31, pretty much dead. I think it was just under an hour 30 and 55. So nearly where I wanted to be, a bit slower, but I kind of knew at that point that the Sub-3 wasn't going to be on. I wasn't hurting, but I just knew I was really having to focus to hold pace. And I mean, a minute is quite a lot to make up. And I knew to make up that minute in the second half, I'd have to be feeling pretty good then. So I thought, well, let's just try and hold on to that pace. And, you know, all went well. The course is advertised as being pretty flat, and it is. But it's still got 140 meters of elevation gain, which, you know, isn't much. That is a pretty flat course, but you know, you notice it. So I think in the next build, I'll incorporate a few more hills. Yeah, because it was actually had more elevation gain than I was expecting. But that's okay. So yeah, the second half, again, it felt good right up until about 30K. So around the 30K mark was where in my plan, I was going to pick it up and bring it home for the Sub-3. So I tried to pick it up, but it immediately became apparent that this was not going to happen. So the next 5K, so kind of 30 to 35-ish Ks, I averaged 4 minutes 24. So dropping off. Now some of that was because of elevation, but I could feel I was dropping off. So I know that was about 30 to 30, I don't know, I'm getting confused here. 5, 10, 15, 20. Anyway, after the halfway mark, I averaged 4:24. The next 5K was 4 minutes 27, so getting slower again. So by this point, I was starting to hurt. But the last 7Ks, oh my goodness. I've often wondered what it's like to hit the wall, and now I know. I completely hit that wall head on, and it was such a good learning experience. Like I don't know why I seem so happy that I hit the wall, because I kind of knew going into this race that this was a real possibility, and I almost welcomed it. I almost wished that it would happen, because my last marathon, I felt I didn't underperform, but I certainly wasn't maxed out. This marathon, I wanted to really get to my absolute limit, and I found that, and it was such a different experience. Like aerobically, I was fine, My breathing wasn't heavy, but my legs just started to shut down. And it was so interesting to experience when you get to that point where your brain just literally starts shutting your body down. The final K that I ran was, I think it was 5 minutes 48 per K, which is so slow. But the interesting thing is I felt like I was absolutely going for it. I was giving it my all in that last K, and I was running like way slower than I do even on my recovery runs. It was really quite extraordinary to experience that no matter how much willpower I had, no matter how much mental toughness and grit, my body was just shutting down. I couldn't do it. So much so, one thing I wasn't prepared for was how mentally draining it would be. I was mentally exhausted at the end because, like I say, even at the start, I found I really had to focus to hold pace. But at the end, man, I just had to summon everything in me, heart, mind, body, everything, just to finish in the end. And on the finish line, like I said, I was just in a total daze. My brain was fried. And afterwards, I just remember sitting there just staring into space. Like, I thought there'd be this big celebration. I thought I'd feel something, but I felt completely absent. I have never been that cooked before in my life, which was really interesting. So so the knee pain. The knee pain did come on quite strong, but I'm certainly not going to blame the result on the knee pain. Yes, that was a contributing factor, but I definitely blew up and hit the wall. And I actually wonder if I ran out of fuel, given how quickly it came on, and just how much I underperformed as a whole compared with what, all my training indicated. I really wonder if I ran out of fuel, which again was good to learn. So next marathon, I'll try taking on a lot more carbs. So I think this time I ended up at around 55, 60 grams an hour. So next time I'll shoot for about 100 grams an hour. But yeah, I wonder if I ran out of fuel but I was just so happy with myself in the end for pushing through because it was so hard. And yeah, so I was in such a daze, I actually forgot to take a gel. I don't know how that's happening because I set my watch up to buzz every time it was time, but I missed a gel somehow. So I guess I didn't have 55 to 60 grams an hour. I missed one at some point. I don't even know when. And towards the end, I didn't even have the energy to take on drinks. Like I found going through the drink stations, at the end, it was just exhausting. Like I thought, if I take a drink here, I don't know if I can actually get through that station. I'm going to stop. Just absolutely spent. And I laugh now. And because of that, the recovery was crazy. Like I was so sore afterwards. I was limping. I couldn't move. All of the indicators on my watch were basically saying, mate, you are borderline dead. My battery level is still only at like 13%. Resting heart rate's way higher. HRV's way higher. So it was so good to go to those depths. I've never dug that deep and put my body through such trauma. And I think trauma is the right word because afterwards, I've never felt like that before. I was so done. So really good experience, but still really happy with that result. Actually really happy I finished. Still got an 8-minute PB, which you can off at, that's still a lot. But again, I don't think anywhere near of what I was capable of, but I'm not actually upset about it at all. I achieved everything I wanted to really, other than my main goal of Sub-3, but I learned so much in that marathon and I experienced what it's like to go to the absolute limit. And yeah, so I feel like a much more experienced runner after that. And in terms of the celebrations, so if you saw my previous video, I was getting all excited about the post-marathon celebrations. I bought a whole bunch of beers. We were having this big feast. I actually only ended up having one beer. Like that's how cooked I was. I didn't just feel like anything. I had to force myself to eat. So we had this huge meal and all this food planned, and I just wasn't hungry. I was so traumatized, so dead. But I still managed to pack away a fair bit. And, I had a lot of beer and food over the coming days, over the last week. So I said to myself that the week after the marathon, I can just do whatever I want. And one really surprising, like I expected to gain weight, but in the first 4 days, I gained 5 kilos. 5 kilos in 4 days, that is extraordinary. Finished up the week 6 kilos heavier. So, oh my goodness, and I feel it. Like I went on my first run yesterday since the marathon, and man, it was depressing. And you can feel the weight. Like I felt fat, it was slow, my heart rate was high, but it's okay. So the plan now is to really slowly rebuild. So obviously I had some pretty big issues with my knee. I'm gonna really slowly rebuild now, take it pretty much day by day, and really focus on getting back to full health before I push anything. So I did have big plans to work on my 5K fitness, but I'm really just gonna take it day by day before the next block starts. So I'm gonna do another video in a few days of all the lessons I learned during this whole training block. But yeah, just wanted to put a race update video. Really great day. Missed my goal by a mile, but learned so much. Dug deeper into the world than I've ever been, and it was strangely satisfying. Completely fell off the bandwagon this last week. So I'm actually over 80 kilos now, which I haven't been for a long time. So I've got some work, but I think I'm gonna lose that soon. From past experience, as soon as I stop drinking, that weight, so I've enjoyed some really great beers over the last week, which has been good. So I fully expect that weight to go almost as quickly as I gained it. But yeah, back into it now, focus on recovery, very slowly rebuilding. I'll see you in a few days for the next video.